Okay.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to talk to me about this. But I think before we get into, since we've never encountered each, I don't know how to properly address you. The other children I knew, she went by Tema, but I don't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah. Um, I usually go by Venerable Chodron, but I also go by Hey You. So, and a variety of other things that people call me. So you
I
can
think we
take your
grew up in
pick.
similar neighborhoods. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds wonderful. So yeah, as I was saying, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me about this X number of weeks ago. I had just taken a look at Shambhala.com. So, let me see what the books are. And then your title
Mm.
just leapt out at me. I just was like, oh my God, is this like the most relevant thing for our times? Like, we're in the most pissed off era, certainly of my life. And it's really degenerated, I'd say, in the last 3 or 4 years. Uh, things have been animated, but then um, there's a severity that is really quite new. So it stuck with me that, I was going, well, should I contact her? And then it just kept coming back to me. And so I'm really happy that, um, you felt inspired to discuss this with me, just because the world needs as much help with anger as we can put out there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah. And right now, actually, I'm working on what it could be a sequel to Working with Anger, but it's about forgiveness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's advanced practice. Yeah.
yeah. You get angry, then you forgive. Then you get angry again, and you forgive again.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Um, so just to start off with, I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about your background. I was curious, like, everyone's got a story of how they came upon Buddhism. And then, of course, for folks that have taken robes, there's usually a story of what led them to ordination.
okay, I try not to talk too long. Of course, it's my favorite topic, myself. And I've told this story hundreds of times, but it doesn't bore me at all. Although I'm sure some people in the audience have heard it hundreds of times and they're quite bored. But anyway, so I grew up during the Vietnam War, and that played a very strong factor in my life. I was always wondering what's the purpose of my life? Yeah, why am I here? And what's the meaning of my life? How does my life have meaning? And what I was hearing from the adults around me, during the Vietnam War, we are killing people so that we can live in peace. Huh? I just did not get that. Doesn't make any sense, and it still doesn't. Um, so I sampled various religions, what was available in a middle class community. Nothing appealed to me. None of that made sense. So when I went away to college, I did what everybody in the late 60s and early 70s did. And still wondering what's the purpose of my life. So after school, I worked for a while in a school, an elementary school, open classroom, and then traveled for about a year and a half in Europe, North Africa, Israel, and then in those days you could go overland to India and Nepal. What's interesting is the most distant place we went on the trip before we decided to go back was a village called Tami in the Himalayas. And as it wound up, years later, I found out that was the village where my root teacher, Zopa Rinpoche, was born. But of course, I didn't know anything about Buddhism then. I didn't know Rinpoche. Okay, came back to the States, went back to school, taught school some more, and then I saw a flyer in a bookstore about a retreat that two Tibetan lamas were giving. And being a teacher, I didn't have anything to do during summer vacation. So I went, and the rest is history. One of the first things they said was, "You don't have to believe anything we say." And I said, "Okay, now I'll listen." And they said, test things out using reasoning, which made sense to me to do, and try the meditation, see if they help you. And so I did that. And after doing that for the rest of the summer, I said, if I don't want to die without exploring this path more, so I quit my job and I went back to Asia, to Kopan. And what's strange is I knew actually rather quickly that I wanted to ordain. Yeah. I don't know now if the person I am now met the person I was then, what I would think of her. I'd probably tell her, slow down, think about things, don't be impulsive. But, I knew what I wanted to do. And when I requested ordination at Kopan, and Lama said yes, but he actually made me wait about 1.5 years, which was good. And why did I want to ordain? Because Buddhism showed me how I could make my life meaningful. Yeah, and I did not want to die having a meaningless life. I didn't want to duplicate my parents' life. They were good parents, they were wonderful people, but that was not for me. I wanted to really put my life into something, and my life energy into something meaningful. So ordination made sense. Also, I realized that I needed to get my ethical conduct in control, and I needed to be consistent and not criticize politicians for things that I did. But, when they lied, it was awful. When I lied, it was good. Yeah, prevented other people from being hurt, right? So I wasn't really living according to my values, and I realized I had to do that. Yeah, so I ordained, and that was 48 years ago, and I think it was the best thing I ever did in my life. Yeah, because anything I've been able to do since then has been on the basis of being ordained.
Gotcha. No, it's an extraordinary path. Thanks for sharing that. Let's see. The word anger means different things to different people, and particularly with look through different ideologic lenses. So I was curious, from a Buddhist perspective, what does anger mean to you?
Okay.
Because like so many people find anger to be very mobilizing, very energizing, and so they associate a certain virtuousness to it.
Oh, well, okay, we'll get there. How I define anger, okay? First of all, I use it as a very general category that includes everything from being irritated to being frustrated, to being enraged and outraged and rebellious and spiteful and vindictive and holding a grudge, on another extreme. But what all those mental states have in common is they are all based on exaggerating the negativity of someone or something, or imputing negativity where there isn't any. Okay? So automatically, from that kind of definition of emptiness, based on not seeing things correctly, then wanting to push them away or get rid of them. Okay? So it may give you a lot of energy, especially when the adrenaline's getting going. Ooh, I'm so mad, I want to go punch that person, or this is so unfair, so unjust, I've got to do something about it. It may give you energy, but it doesn't give you clarity of mind. Yeah, because when we're angry, you know, our perception is distorted. Things are not inherently existent bad from their own side. It's depending on how I'm looking at them, how I'm describing the situation to myself. Yeah. So just the fact that you feel alive with all that adrenaline going doesn't mean that it's a good mental state. Yeah. Why? Well, just think about it. Is anger beneficial? Well, first of all, are people happy when they're angry? Are you happy when you're angry? Anybody here happy when they're angry? No. If we were happy, we wouldn't be angry. Yeah? So if we're not happy when we're angry, how can anger be good for, you know, peace in the mind and peace among people? It can't. Yeah. So, and then when we look at our behavior when we're angry, we say the most awful things to the people that we care about the most. Yeah, I mean, who do you get the angriest with? People you are close to, or somebody halfway around the world who's a stranger? Yeah, it's the people we're close to. And who do we say the most awful things to? The people we love the most. Perfectly reasonable, isn't it? Cuckoo. Yeah. And then we say things and do things under the influence of anger, and we regret them afterwards, and then we have to make amends. Or we feel guilty, and we just sit there and stew in our guilt, which doesn't benefit anybody. Okay? So
it really emanates from like the story we tell ourselves about like the other.
Yeah. And the more people agree with our story, the more we feel we're right. Okay? And people always at this point say, but what about social justice? Don't we have to be angry, for example, when we see the Gazans getting starved or the Ukrainians getting bombed? Shouldn't we be angry? Isn't anger useful? Okay? Well, okay. Is the Dalai Lama angry? When you go to his teachings, does he rant and rave about and call people names and insult them and tell them to go to hell or whatever? No. Yeah. So the idea that anger is necessary to correct social ills doesn't make any sense. Yeah. His Holiness uses compassion. Now you might say, but when you're compassionate, people step all over you. When you're angry and you tell them, you go bomb them, you know, just like our country did a couple of days ago, you know, go bomb them, then they respect you. I don't call that respect, I call that fear. Yeah, and you may make a lot of people afraid, but that doesn't mean that even if they succumb to your dominance, that you're going to live happily ever after. Yeah, people who are unhappy and miserable let you know. Yeah, and then you live in a turbulent society. So His Holiness, what he tells the Tibetans all the time is don't be angry at the communist Chinese. Yeah, this is the government, and don't even be angry with them. Okay, now, does that mean that he's just rolling over and the communist government is taking advantage of him? Well, look at it this way. It was about the same time, the late 40s, early 50s, when Tibet was overrun by communist China and taken under them, and when the Gazans, the Palestinians, also lost their land, and whatever freedom they had, Now, the Palestinians, their leaders have dealt with, the problems they have and wanting their freedom, wanting their autonomy by violence and by anger, from the get-go. And if you remember Olympians being kidnapped and missiles flying, and there was always violence. With the Tibetans, no violence. Here we are, how many decades later? Palestinians still don't have their own country, neither do Tibetans, but how many people have died in the Palestinian struggle? So many more, but the Tibetans, not so many, So it isn't that anger and violence gives you more power and makes you more effective. It creates a lot of turbulence, a lot of negative karma. For what purpose?
You brought up an interesting point about, I think it was the role of compassion. I was wondering if first you could tell me a little bit more about what compassion means to you, because I've been in a good number and a good cross-section of Buddhist environments, and it's one of those terms where you have 5 people and you'll get 7 different definitions. And then getting back to like the stories we tell ourselves, it often amounts to people, at least my perception of it is people telling themselves to play the story of what they think a nice person is. So it's like this awkward kind of veneer of like strange smiles, or the other, something similar, like, oh wow, it's everything's a Hallmark card. Whereas it sounds, you're talking about something very specifically psychological and somewhat tactical.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the way I think of anger, and this is a Buddhist definition.
Or compassion.
Compassion, sorry. Compassion is, it's the wish for sentient beings to be free of dukkha, which is often translated as suffering, but it doesn't mean suffering. It means unsatisfactory experiences. So it's the wish for sentient beings to be free of dukkha and the causes of dukkha. Okay? So it doesn't mean giving people everything they want. It doesn't mean being a people pleaser. It doesn't mean being what I call Susie cream cheese. Somebody who's always smiling. Oh, yes, would you like this? Would you like that? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean being the world's doormat. It's a kind of caring that isn't just wanting people to be free of the present unpleasantness they have. But the Buddhist concept is looking long-term. Long-term. What is the best thing to help somebody else? So, for example, as it often happens, you're getting gas at the gas station and somebody comes up and asks you for money. And you have a very sneaking suspicion that they want it for drugs. Well, do you say, oh, I should be compassionate and give them, here's money, go do what you want. That's not helping the other person, that's harming them. Yeah. If you say, no, I won't give you money for that, but I will take you to a detox place, then that's being compassionate, even though the other person may say, you're so mean, you're not compassionate, So it's the same, I think, with parents when they raise kids. Parents love their kids more than anything, but do they give their kids everything they want? If they do, their kid's going to be a brat and won't be able to function in the world. So parents sometimes have to say no, and they have to say no in a strong, firm voice. Yeah, but it's because they care about the child and the long-term happiness of the child. Okay?
Thank you, that's helpful. So in terms of like relating to the experience of anger, if I'm experiencing anger, is that something that I would want to either to interrupt the experience or to let it kind of run its course and then uh, draw lessons from, I don't know, you'd say the aftermath, but after the experience concludes?
Okay. So is it good just to let the anger, to try and stop
Get it out of
it?
your system.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're giving two alternatives: get it out of your system, bleh, or just sit back, let it ride, and then after it dissipates, of course, you're perfectly peaceful and have a very clear mind afterwards.
Or try to interrupt it
No.
somehow. Okay.
Yeah, we should interrupt it. If you just let it continue, thinking it's going to wear itself out. I do prison work, and most of the people that we encounter in prison are there because of anger. Yeah? If you don't counteract your anger, I mean, some are due to greed, but most due to anger. If you just let your anger go thinking that it's going to dissipate, I don't think so. And that's not my personal experience. I may chill out after a few minutes, but I'll come back to the incident again later, and I'll go over it in my mind and ruminate again, and how could they say that, and how could they do that, and I should have said this, and I'm going to now go back to them and say blah, 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 because I got to cut this off. No, I mean, if you don't deal with your anger, yeah, it often gets acted out, and we wind up in big messes later. Yeah. So what Buddhism is suggesting, and especially if you look at Shantideva's Guide to a Bodhisattva's Conduct, he's giving us all sorts of ways to interrupt the anger. How does he do it? It's not by suppressing the anger. It's not by repressing it. It's by looking at the situation from a different perspective, describing it to yourself in a different way, and then you realize, oh, there's nothing for me to be angry at. And so the anger, it's not suppressed, it's not dumped out on other people, but it's counteracted.
In your book, there was an interesting distinction you made. It was kind of in passing. Um, there was a difference between an internal attitude and an external behavior. And what tips can you give me for better understanding like my actual internal attitude?
Our internal attitude, what I mean by that is what are we thinking? What are we feeling? Okay, what's my perspective on this? How am I describing it to myself? How am I responding to it? You know, am I angry? Am I thoughtful? You know, all of that, what's going on inside me. Yeah. And of course, the external action is what I say and what I do.
One of the, I don't know if you'd say tactics, or one of the methodologies you mentioned in your book was the use of analytic meditation. And
Mm-hmm.
how does like analytic, like I do a lot of analysis in my job, but it doesn't especially make me like more connected to the universe and other
Yeah.
people and things like that. So what am I like not understanding about analytical meditation?
Okay. Well, analytical meditation is found in Buddhism. It's, you know, we often talk of either stabilizing meditation that involves shamatha or analytic meditation, which we use to actually understand the object. For example, you can't just say impermanent, impermanent, or empty, empty, and that's not how you realize those objects. So analysis is required. Here, analysis doesn't mean intellectual going round and around like you're writing a, you know, a PhD thesis or something. It refers to actually asking yourself, how does this exist? Or what is this thing? Yeah, or how the way I am interpreting something, does that have anything to do with reality or not? Is it exaggerated? So all the antidotes that Shantideva talks about, they all involve analytic meditation because we have to go back to the cushion and think about things. Yeah, you can't just read a verse in Shantideva and now I got it. No, it's a thing of making that way of thinking familiar in our own mind. Yeah, so that's quite important. So, for example, with anger, okay, I can tell you a couple of things that I do. One of them is, you know, okay, something happened, I'm mad, and I'd say, okay, well, why am I mad? Well, they said this and that and the other thing. They insulted me, or they're bossing me around, or they're not listening, or, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. And then I think, oh, yeah, why am I experiencing this situation? It has to do with my previously created karma. Yeah. In previous lives and also in this life, I have spoken rudely and been inconsiderate to other people. I've insulted them, I've criticized them. Whatever I'm getting now in my environment, I've also dished out to other people. Yeah, not just once, you know, not accidentally, but many times and with very strong motivation. I'm gonna tell this person, whatever it is, okay? So why am I in this situation that I don't like now that's causing me suffering? The principal cause is my own actions, either in this life, earlier in this life, or in previous lives. So who's the main one responsible for my predicament? It's not the other person. They're just the cooperative condition. The reason I'm in this situation is my own actions. Yeah. So I can't be mad at the other person. It's not their fault. It's my actions that put me in that situation. Yeah. So being angry at somebody else is really rather ridiculous. Now, does that mean I then turn the anger at myself and say, you're so bad, look what you did, no wonder they're criticizing you because you criticize other people, blah, blah, blah. No, it doesn't mean turning the anger inside and just criticizing myself. That's useless, doesn't do any good, okay? But what it does mean is if I don't like the result of my actions, I need to stop doing those actions. So if I don't like people blaming me for things that I didn't do or criticizing me or whatever, I need to stop blaming things on other people and criticizing them. Yeah, that's what I need to do. Being angry at the other person doesn't make sense. Yeah. So that's a way of doing analytic meditation. You really look deeply in the situation. Okay, another one that I do. This one isn't particularly from Shantideva, the whole thread of it, but the main idea is from him. So I'll sit there, okay, something happened, let's say, okay, well, criticism, none of us like being criticized, yeah? Okay, so somebody just criticized me, and I'm mad, I feel hurt, yeah. Some people are the explosive people and scream back. Other people are what I call the implosive people. You go to your room, take out your thing of tissue, and cry and feel sorry for yourself. Okay, neither of those really does any good, except it increases the stock of the tissue company. They do have good business. But apart from that, not much good. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll I realize, okay, if I'm angry, my mind is not seeing things correctly. So I want to have a little discussion with that mind, okay? So I'll put my wisdom mind here and my angry mind there, okay? So wisdom mind says to angry mind, why are you angry? Angry mind says, well, they did this and they did that and they did that. Yes, okay, they did that, but why are you angry? Well, you don't understand. I just told you they did this and this. And that goes on for a while. And you keep saying, okay, why are you angry? I just wish they'd stop it. Oh, okay, you wish they'd stop it, but why are you angry? And then, you keep asking the angry part of yourself, why are you angry? Yeah, and whenever they start pointing the finger or giving a vague answer, you say, yeah, that's true, but why are you angry? And it's very interesting what you come out with. I'm not going to tell you the answer. Okay, try it. It's really very interesting, yeah? Yeah, well, I'll give you a hint. It usually comes out to something of, I'm the most important one in the world and I'm miserable and the people should be nicer to me. Okay, now what do you do with that if you're a Buddhist practitioner? You say, oh yeah, you're right, you're the most, discriminated person in the whole universe. The universe should bow down to you because they're so privileged to have you in it. So I do this. I'll make fun of my self-centered thought, And then at that point, I really see how ridiculous it is to be angry, because it's coming down to this little kid who's stamping their feet saying, I'm not getting what I want, the world isn't nice to me, And I'm, that's basically what it's coming down to. As an adult, of course, it doesn't come out like a 3-year-old having a temper tantrum, but that's really what's going on. Yeah. And then I have to say, okay, yeah. And then by that time, I've dropped it. Yeah. Yeah, because, we study so much about how all the disadvantages of the self-centered mind. Yeah, and really it's something, like Shantideva says, if you compare, how does he say it? The benefits of one, the benefits of one and the disadvantages of the other. I can't remember the quote right now, maybe somebody here can find it. But, you think of really the benefit of giving up your self-centeredness compared to, the disadvantages of doing that. And it's totally beneficial, yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that would that be helpful in like relating to past harms? Because that's like a category where it's, people will say, well, you got to let go of this and such to get over
Mm-hmm.
it. Some things are just really hard to let go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, why are you upset? Well, it's hard to let go. Yes, it's hard to let go. Then? Well, it's really, really hard to let go. Okay. Yeah. Well, can you change the universe and make it easy to let go? Yeah. I mean, really, what that person did was so terrible. They need to apologize to me first before I can let go of my anger. Yeah, and they won't come and apologize. So first they harm me, then they don't apologize. You see, it's all their fault. So I make myself into a victim, and then I'm miserable. Yeah? And to that kind of thing, my teacher would always go, then. Or one time I went to him and I complained about, I was director of something and the people, weren't following what I said, like now. And, and I said, Rinpoche, I try so hard to do a good job and people just criticize me. And he looked at me and he said, well, people criticize the Buddha too. Okay. Yeah. Or as my mother would say, do you want an award?
Funny you should mention it, Mom. But
Yeah. My mom had a lot of good sayings that I didn't appreciate at the time. Yeah.
This also sort of gets into the Buddhist doctrine of seeing the other as the teacher, even
Mm-hmm.
when like it's an awful other. Um, and that's a really hard one to either
Yeah.
relate to or just say like, say,
Yeah, you're not my teacher, you're my enemy. Yeah? You're not teaching me anything, you're provoking my hate. It's all your fault. Yeah. What you're teaching me is it's your fault. Okay, that argument doesn't work either. Okay, when it says, I will see that person as my teacher, yeah, what it means, what are they teaching us? What are they showing us? Our anger. And how we are so super sensitive to anything that we think is challenging our ego. Yeah? That's what they're making evident to us, is our anger. Yeah. So from that perspective, they're showing us something very valuable. Yeah. In my own case, yeah, when I started out in the Dharma, I knew I got irritated, but I didn't think I had a bad problem with anger at all. I didn't yell and scream and throw things. Yeah, I didn't do that, so I don't have a problem with anger. And if my teacher had said, oh, you have a problem with anger, I would have said no. So what did he do? He sent me to be the disciplinarian for the macho Italian monks. Yeah, an American woman. Yeah, being the disciplinarian for macho men. Oh, well, I learned that I had a problem with anger. Okay? And they were the ones who showed that to me. Otherwise, I would not have seen it. Yeah? So I have to, when they say, put your enemy on the crown of your head or something, well, as you would your teacher, well, yes, thank you, because you showed me something very important that I need to work on, that I was just totally spaced out on. Yeah? And to go back to the thing that you said before about, when people have really been hurt and there's something very bad that, that it's hard to get over. Yeah. Yes, it's difficult, but nobody made the rules. You can't complain to anybody that, make it easier, because nobody can. And if you say, I can't let go of my anger until they apologize, then you're making yourself into a victim. You're saying, I have no power in this. They are completely in control. And since they don't apologize, they control the situation, and I'm going to be miserable. They're not doing that to me. I'm doing it to myself. Yeah, by just holding on. And, like my mother said, do you want an award? Well, yes. I'd like an award as the one most traumatized by whatever it is. Okay? Now, I know some things that happen to people are really awful. But all these methods that Shantideva taught, that the Buddha taught, if you really work on them, consistently, they do work, and they enable us to give all that whole backlog of grievances and bitterness up, because if we don't release it, we grow up to be a bitter old person. Who wants to be that? Yeah? So if you say that this is totally impossible to forgive, it's impossible, I can't forgive this, well, what are you doing to yourself with that kind of attitude? Mm-hmm. So, I think we have to have some self-confidence that, yes, if we practice these antidotes, the Buddha didn't teach these antidotes so that he could write a book, He taught them so that we could meditate on these things. So that's our work, and nobody else can do it for us.
In your experience, A, practicing over the decades, and then B, relating to others practicing over the decades, what have you seen as being like the 2 or 3 most effective or transformative meditations or mental activities that people were, you know, like say 10 years later, you can just go, wow, they really turned it around, or really much easier, you know, I like them much more because
Mm,
they've improved their temperament.
yeah. You know, that's hard for me to say because it's so individual. You know, it's easier for me to say, point out things that I think are common problems, because people come to me with those. But to say what the solutions are, that's going to differ person by person. Yeah. So I don't think I could, you know, synthesize that into a couple of things. Yeah.
Reasonable enough, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. But I can tell you what I think one of Westerners' biggest problems is, is telling ourselves that we aren't worthwhile. Yeah, that we're too, uh, you know, low self-esteem. I can't do it. It's beyond my capability. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. Oh, poor me, poor me. Yeah, I think that is what I encounter from people a lot. That is really a big obstacle in practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing the story of Western teachers telling that to the Dalai Lama, like in one of the early Mind and Life conferences in Dharamsala.
Yeah.
And he was just like, nah, you're like yanking my chain here, right?
Yeah, I was there at that time when he did that. And he's like, "What?" And it was at a Mind Life conference. So the room is full of all these scientists, brilliant people, PhDs. His Holiness said that, you know, you're brilliant people, you're very successful in your careers, you know, you're known for what you've done. How come you don't like yourself? Yeah, he was so puzzled by that. And so that started a whole discussion about in the West why people, you know, don't like themselves and have such low self-esteem. And so we brainstormed a whole bunch of different ideas. Yeah, but he was very puzzled. Mhm.
It's one of our unique quirks.
Yeah. Well, I think some of it comes from the religions we grew up in. Yeah. If you grew up hearing about original sin, if you grew up hearing about punishment, you're going to get punished, you're going to go to hell, or you have to confess, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. That, and you're a little kid, you just take that in and think, you know, I'm defective goods. Yeah. So I tease people because, you know, we think, oh, I'm defective goods. So, yeah. So they handed out Buddha nature and you got skipped. Yeah. Everybody else has Buddha nature, but you. Yeah. That's how we're looking at it. You know, it's the poor me. And we get a lot of mileage out of poor me. Yeah, don't we? Yeah, we get a lot of mileage, but we're a lot of misery.
What would be some helpful either activities or resources that someone could go to, you know, after watching your teachings here, um, to learn how to be more capable in relating to anger?
Okay, I would say um, find a qualified teacher and request them to teach you Shantideva's text. And then request them to teach you the Lojong, the thought training teachings. Yeah, because that's full of these kind of antidotes too. And then there is, the program that's coming out of Emory University, Sea Learning, where it's what they're doing is trying to teach compassion in the public schools. And it's a really wonderful program. His Holiness kind of supports it. He got them going and thinking about that. So that's something else people can research, because that is not a particularly Buddhist thing. It's it's, I think there's Sea Learning, and then there's CBCT, compassion-based cognitive therapy, something like that, yeah. And so that is also very, very helpful, yeah. And I would say also, what's it called? Nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Gotcha. So with Shantideva, his book is The Way of the Bodhisattva.
Yes,
And
yeah.
then with Lojong, we really didn't get much into that. Can you like sort of summarize what the Lojong practices are or the Lojong teachings are?
Okay. Well, there's many of them. But just the whole thing behind Lojong is transforming adversity into the path. Yeah. So instead of seeing adversity as like, I gotta get away from it, it's like, oh, I can use this to deepen my Dharma practice and, get me closer to being able to be a bodhisattva. So that's good, Yeah, so 7-point mind training, the 8 verses of thought training, the 37 practices of bodhisattvas, all of those, turning from the 4 clingings, all those texts, if you can have somebody unpack them for you. Yeah. So I've given talks about all these things. It's on my website, thubtenchodron.org, so people can look there. But there's many teachers who teach this, and I think these kind of teachings are really essential, for us.
Great, thank you. It's been really informative and super helpful. I was wondering if we could close. Can you take us through a guided meditation in that would be helpful in relating to anger or understanding it or transforming it?
I guess I could try. I kind of gave the instructions for a couple of them, so I could, guide you through that. Okay, yeah, I'll do quick, huh?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So come back to your breath, let the mind settle for a minute. Then think of a specific situation where you got angry. A specific person, specific situation. and then think of the other person or the group of people, whoever it was that you're upset with, and think, as much as I want to be happy, so do they want to be happy. As the wish for happiness and freedom from suffering is what motivates me all day, that's what motivates them all day too. We're all samsaric beings trying to be happy and not suffer. And so sit and dwell on that. Let that sink into the mind and think, imagine that person and just really think that's exactly what's going on inside of them. And it's just the exact same thing that's going on inside of me. So if I just take away all my judgment about what they're doing and just look at them and say, they're somebody just like me. They want to be happy. They don't want to suffer. And that is what is motivating them to do whatever it is that I find objectionable. It's not that they wish to harm me. It's they're trying to be happy, and at this moment, they are not happy. So here's somebody just like me, wanting to be happy, not wanting to suffer, and they're suffering right now. That's why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, it's not that they want to harm. It's they're trying to be free of their own suffering, and they're confused. They don't know how to do that in a way that will free them from their suffering. So they are taking it out by doing this behavior that I find harmful. So they're a suffering human being. Is anger an appropriate response to somebody who's suffering? No. what's an appropriate response to somebody who's suffering? Compassion. They're hurt. I know how much they're hurting right now because I've suffered also. And what they need is compassion and help, not my anger and revenge. And so generate compassion. Really wishing them well, because if they were free of their suffering, if they were happy, they wouldn't be doing what we find objectionable. They would be acting in a totally different way. So wish them also to be happy. So come out of meditation. I should add here that seeing somebody is suffering, and that as the motivation to be free of suffering, that's why they're doing what they're doing. If I respond with compassion, if I respond with love, wanting them to be happy, that does not mean that I don't hold them accountable. Yeah, you can have love and compassion, and for the other person's benefit, you hold them accountable with love and compassion, not with punishment. Okay?
Thank you. And I guess before we conclude, I would ask if any of your audience has questions about anger that that are on their minds.
Okay. They're all so quiet. I should just tell them to do something, and then they'll react.
Rebel. Yeah.
Okay, everybody go to the forest and start working. Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to go? That's too bad. Come on. Oh. Anybody? Okay. Somebody with a comment over here.
Just a comment, Glenn, is that I've used a lot of these trainings that Venerable's just sharing tonight, but the one that, as far as not justifying the anger in regards to the object, the person that's is upset, angry with me, is there's this whole part of the teachings on the practice of fortitude that says, just like me, is that when I'm under the control of this kind of affliction, that I am not in control of myself. That is actually a form of crazy making. It's actually a form of mental illness, and that they have no autonomy when their minds are under the control of this. And I know that as well. And so to see them that they don't have a handle on it. I don't have a handle on my own clarity, my mouth when I'm angry. So too, they are under the control of something that is beyond their ability to reason with, to deal with right now. And so you're actually dealing with someone who's kind of crazy right now. And so when I look at myself and want people to have some understanding towards my mind, is I want them to see that Semke's really not in control of herself. She doesn't have her wits about her. And so I can open up my heart to say, I know who this person can be. They're just amazing people, and right now that person's not there. They're under the control of something they have no agency over. And that really helps me a lot, to not demonize or to blame or to find fault with what's happening between the two of us. I find it extremely helpful to see that this is not who they truly are.
Yeah. And then if you do taking and giving Tonglen after that, may I take their pain, may I take their lack of clarity and give them my happiness, then that's a good follow-up for that. Yeah. Anything else? Uh-huh.
Thinking about who the anger actually hurts, years ago a few of us went to hear somebody speak who had been in the Holocaust, and you asked her, have you forgiven? And she said, I will never forgive those monsters. And I thought about it, and she was a child when all that happened, and so the people that she wasn't forgiving were probably dead. But the only one left to hurt with that anger was herself.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she was the one holding the anger who was still in pain. When I was in Israel some years ago, leading a retreat, because Israel is the country has PTSD. Yeah, it's difficult. And the Palestinians have PTSD too, But I led a meditation where we imagined going, for example, to Auschwitz, and we did the Chenrezi practice first. So we were Chenrezis. We imagined we're going to Auschwitz and Chenrezis coming with us. And as we went from one building to the next building to the next building, with Chenrezi saying the mantra, Chenrezi, radiating light from the heart to fill the space, it was really quite transformative, that kind of meditation. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it, huh?
Yeah, those were wonderful contributions. Thanks to everyone in the room that participated along with us. It's been a wonderful experience, and I really appreciate you spending this time with me. And I'm very hopeful that these teachings will find their audience and be helpful, radiating out.
Yeah. It would be nice if some of the leaders of our own country and other countries, were interested in this kind of thing. But, what one person does is important. It can influence a lot of people. So we influence people in the people around us. So if we work on ourselves in this way, it can at least help the people around us, and then ripple effect out, and hopefully reach some of the people in power. Okay, thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you. It was a great honor. I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone in the room.
And thanks for your good questions. Yeah.
Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh, actually, should we dedicate the merit?
Yes, I didn't know if you wanted to do that. I was going to say that after we signed out. Let's dedicate the merit. So you read my mind. Okay, let's dedicate the merit. Okay. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you.
Thank you too.
And you're welcome to come visit us.
Oh, I appreciate that. I will
Yeah.
try to get up there.
Yeah, good. Are you in Colorado?
No, I'm actually in Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I slipped on some interesting banana peels along the way. I'm originally from California, then Nevada, and
Okay. Good.
but I will try to get up there.
Yeah, please do. Okay, great.
Take care, all.
Bye-bye. You too.